Socialism never works and never will work. It's maybe obvious for some people, but maybe not for all. Socialism was implemented basically according to Marx's ideas. The socialism, the real socialism, was implemented in circa 40 countries. It always ended in catastrophe, with catastrophe, and never ended otherwise. When socialists are nagged about those effects, those catastrophes, they usually tend to point to Scandinavian countries as countries which are reportedly both socialist and successful, which is of course not the case. Those countries are super free market. Those countries have super free market economies. It's very easy to start a new company in Sweden, even more in Denmark. You have a very flexible work code and working codes and working laws. Also the same is with habitation and so on. You cannot really call those countries socialist, because they are not. They have free market economies with a big system of social benefits. And if you, for instance, if you take a millionaire who is running a private company all his life, and then he spends all of this accumulated money to make some sort of social system to pay for medicines for all his neighbors, he is still a capitalist who is just generous. So there are countries with very generous capitalists, and they are generous because some of them want to be generous. Those would be those company owners who support social democrat parties, and some are forced to be generous. But there are no socialist countries at all. For instance, if you really want to have a socialist countries, you must have central planning, because central planning is the real difference. The country becomes one big company, and it's run by the state, and run or not run, because it was never socialism would never work if all the countries in the world would be socialist, because the economic planning would be impossible. For instance, a socialist country is all based on wishful thinking and propaganda, and maybe good intentions to some extent, of course, but they don't have data, because they don't have self-regulatory market system, so they don't have data which enable them to plan and project economical policy and so on. So if all the land on Earth would be controlled by the Soviet Union, no economical policy would be possible. So it's totally irrational and it's totally idiotic to be socialist, because it cannot work. It cannot work. It will never work and never will.